Hello, my name is Clare Pooley, and I'm the author of the blog Mummy Was a Secret Drinker and the book The Sober Diaries. And many of you will know me as Sober Mummy because that was a pseudonym that I used for several years before I finally came out. And this evening, I'm going to talk about alcohol and parenting. And I have to say up front, a sort of health warning, that I am absolutely not an expert on parenting. I just muddle along trying to bring up my children the best I can, just like everybody else does. So I'm really not here to tell anyone how to bring up their kids because, I'm only just about managing to bring up mine. Um, but what I did want to talk about is the effect that drinking had on my parenting skills and how I found parenting since I quit drinking. Um, Now, at any point, if you want to ask questions, just type them up in the comments and I'll save as much time as I can at the end to answer them. So do ask questions about alcohol and parenting, or just alcohol, or anything that isn't even booze related, if you like, although I can't promise I'll answer those, but I'll do my best. So please do ask away. And yeah, parenting is hard, and I find that just as I get to grips with bringing up my children, they get older, and there's a whole new set of challenges. And when I started writing the Sober Diaries, my children were 6, 9, and 11, and now the eldest is 14 and a teenager. So there's a whole load of new challenges, and I've done motherhood from all sides of the fence. So I was a full-time working mum for a while, and then when my third child was born, I quit work and I became a full-time mum at home. And now I work part-time from home. So I've sort of seen it from all different sides. And the truth is that each of those models has its own challenges, and absolutely none of them are easy. When I was working full time, I felt constantly guilty. So when I was at work, I felt guilty about not being at home with my kids. And then when I was at home, I felt guilty about all the work I should be doing. And, I felt constantly that I was dropping balls and I wasn't really doing it very well. And I also found it very difficult to switch from one mode to the other. So I come back from work and I'd been spending all day in meetings and sort of kicking ass and well, I'm not sure I ever kicked ass, but there we go. And I come home and I'd suddenly have to read bedtime stories, and it was a completely different pace and a completely different part of the day, and I found it very difficult to adjust from one to the other. And alcohol really helped with that. Having a large glass of wine just helped me to relax, and it was a sort of fast track to switch mode from being a working mum to being a mum at home. And then I quit work when my littlest was born, and I found that wasn't easy either. And being a full-time mum is really hard work. It's physically exhausting, and it's also, to be honest, I think some of the time I was bored, and I loved wine at that point because it made me feel adult again, and it made me feel like I was still a grown up. So I would pour a glass of wine, put some music on, and I dance around the kitchen, thinking, yeah, I've still got it. I'm not just somebody who changes nappies all day. So wine helped there too. And, I thought that everybody else was doing it too. When I took the children on a play date, I was just as likely to be offered a glass of wine as I was a cup of tea. And social media was filled with all those jokes about wine o'clock and mummy's little helper. And I used to get ads on social media. I think Facebook knew that I was a drinker because I used to get ads for things like booze bangles, which were bracelets that had wine in them, and booze purses, which were handbags with wine in the lining and a tap on the outside, so you could sort of empty a glass surreptitiously and all that sort of stuff. And it just seemed to me that every all mums drank to be able to cope. It was perfectly normal. And our mother's generation used Valium, and our generation used booze. And we were brought up to believe that we could have it all, and that we could work and be mums and do everything. And that's it is possible, but it's really, really hard. And often the men that were doing all that had wives at home keeping the ship afloat. And we were dealing with work and childcare and housework, and and that's really tough. So we ended up self-medicating with booze as a way of sort of trying to escape. And by the way, if you're listening to this as a dad, then I understand that's hard too. So please don't think that I think we mums have it really hard and you have it really easy, because I know that the parenting is hard whether you're a mother or a father. So the problem with drinking every day to relieve the sort of stresses and strains of parenting is that alcohol is a drug. Now, that sounds obvious, but it took me a really long time to work that out. And it so the bottles are so beautiful and wine is so sophisticated, and I thought it was sort of Mediterranean, and it was one of my 5 a day, and I really didn't think about it as a drug, but it is. And if you're drinking every day, as I was, to sort of cope with life, then your tolerance gradually builds up and up and up. And I found that eventually I was drinking not just one glass at the end of the day to chill out, but I was drinking a whole bottle, and I was drinking more than a whole bottle at weekends. So I was drinking 10 bottles a week. And that was having a terrible effect on my mental and my physical health. So I was 2 stone overweight. I was stuck in a rut. I was anxious. I was an insomniac. I was mildly depressed. My life really wasn't very good. But the worst thing, I think, was the effect I realized it was having on my children. They knew that my all-time favorite hobby was drinking, because every birthday and every Christmas they would give me presents that had something to do with wine. So I'd get corkscrews and I'd get bottle stoppers. And my husband joked, there's no point in giving mummy a bottle stopper because there's never anything left in the bottle to stop. And it was very true. So, and they give me mugs that say things like, I'd rather be drinking wine. So it was a big joke as far as they were concerned. But wasn't just a joke. They were always also, growing up to believe that it was perfectly normal for adults to permanently have a glass of wine welded to their hands, and that grown-ups needed wine to cope. And that's not a good message for children to hear. And now, something that makes me feel really guilty is I used to joke with friends in front of my children about how I needed a glass of wine, and so, oh God, I've been with the kids all day, I really need a glass of wine. And I realized, how did that make them feel, that mummy didn't like being with them enough to be able to do it without drinking? And that makes me feel awful now, that was a message I was giving them. And yeah, so I hope I'm making up for it now. And the other problem is I spent years wrapping up bedtime stories as fast as I could so that I could get downstairs to the kitchen and pour a glass of wine. And I organise our weekend activities so that we could do things where the grown-ups would be drinking and the children would be doing something else. And I would avoid organising anything for the children that meant that I'd have to drive after 6 o'clock, because I didn't want to be driving, I wanted to be drinking. And basically I sort of had a different agenda from them. I was on a bit of a different wavelength. They were they were doing their thing and I was doing my thing. And that, I think that's a real shame. And then a couple of things happened that sort of brought everything to a head. And one was that my daughter's teacher, so my littlest, was in year 1 and she was learning how to read. And I went to collect her from school, and her teacher said, Claire, I've got something really funny to tell you. Maddie was reading today and she was reading a book called A Cup of Tea. And I said, oh, does mummy like a cup of tea? And she said, no, mummy likes wine. And I went, ha 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 ha. And the teacher went, ha 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 ha. And, but inside something sort of died a bit, and I felt really, really awful. And then not long after that, a couple of weeks after that, there's the incident that was the first page of my book, The Sober Diaries. And so if you've read that, forgive me because you'll have heard this story, but I woke up the day after a birthday party and my birthday party, and I had a terrible hangover. And I went down to the kitchen, and the children were playing in the kitchen. And I knew that the only thing that would make me feel better is more alcohol. And because, it was the, the only thing that was going to get rid of my headache and make me feel human again. But it was 11 o'clock in the morning, and I had a really hard and fast rule that I would never drink before midday, because I thought if you drank before midday, it made you an alcoholic, and I didn't want to think that that's what I was. So I never did that, and until that morning, because I felt so awful that I looked in the cupboard and I found a bottle of wine that had a little bit of red wine left in it. But I didn't want my children to see me drinking at 11 o'clock in the morning, so I poured it into a mug. And I drank it, and I did feel better until I looked at the mug and it said, "The world's best mum." And I felt really awful. And I haven't had a drink since then. So, that was what brought it to a head. And I've sort of discovered since that that alcohol and parenting, I thought alcohol really helped me. And the more that time goes on, the more I realize that alcohol and parenting just do not go together at all. So interesting, there's a study recently by the Institute of Alcohol Studies, and they found that 1 in 6 children, so 15% of children in their study, had asked their parents to drink less or to stop drinking, which is incredible when you think about it. And they said that even children of very moderate drinkers felt embarrassed or worried by their parents drinking. So, I think our children see a lot more than we think they do. And children, the reason they think for this is that they say that children really crave consistency. They like their parents to act in a way that they're used to. And alcohol doesn't help you behave consistently. If you're drinking, your moods are constantly changing. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. Sometimes you can behave in ways that they're not used to, and that really scares them. So according to this study, they said that children who have parents who, again, are even moderate drinkers are less likely to describe their parents as positive role models. So, so if you've quit drinking or you're about to quit drinking, then you're doing a really good thing for your children. I thought that parenting without alcohol would be hard because booze was my friend. It was my little helper and my reward. And I thought, how can I be a mum without that help? And now I've discovered that actually it is much easier, and there are 4 reasons for that as far as I'm concerned. One is that I don't feel like I have to run away from my kids the whole time. So I'm happy to spend ages over bedtime stories. I'm happy to play Monopoly with them. I'm happy to drive them around at in the evening rather than sitting at home with a glass of wine. And I'm on the same wavelength as them, and I think that makes things much easier. I'm also much more consistent, so I'm less grumpy. I'm less likely to shout. I'm more patient and even-tempered. And a few months after I quit, I asked my 9-year-old whether he thought I was different since I quit drinking, and he said he thought about it for ages and ages. And I thought, oh God, what's he going to say? And he said, yes, you're more mummy-ish. And I thought, actually, that's all I really wanted to be is more mummy-ish. So for me, that was great. Thirdly, I have a lot more time and energy than I had when I was drinking. So to start with, I don't have hangovers in the morning, and that makes a huge difference, as you know. And I feel, again, being a parent is tough, and being a parent with a hangover is really tough. And my weekends now are twice as long as they used to be, or they feel twice as long. So I can pack a lot more in, and I'm much more likely to take the children swimming, go on bike rides, and not just organise boozy lunches, which is what I used to do. Um, but I think one of the best things for me is that I feel like I'm a much better role model for the children, and they're really proud of me, and they constantly tell me how proud they are, which makes me really happy. And what I'm showing them is that it's perfectly possible and really good to live a life without drink. And my husband still drinks, but he drinks moderately, damn him. I don't know how he does that. And so he's showing them how to drink sensibly, and I'm showing them that it's perfectly possible not to drink at all. Um, and I hope that my children will grow up to be much better drinkers than I was, or to be non-drinkers, either way. But for me, and this is a sort of final thing I'm going to say, is that the most important reason to quit drinking, I think, if you're a parent, is that one day, I've got a prop here. One day, life will throw you some of these. Life will throw you lemons, because shit happens. And my thing was 8 months after I quit drinking, I got breast cancer. But other people, everyone has something. We all have to deal with things like bereavement, divorce, illness. And, one day you might need to drive a sick child to hospital in the middle of the night, or, you might split up with your partner, or something bad might happen. And if you're using alcohol to deal with everyday stresses and strains, then when something really bad happens, all the wheels are going to fall off. And I get lots and lots of emails from people saying that they were just about managing to cope with the amount they were drinking, and then something bad happened and their drinking took off, and they ended up sort of hitting rock bottom very quickly. So and if you're having to deal with something like that, something like divorce, then your children are dealing with it too, and it's your job as a parent to make sure they're okay, and you can't do that if you're drinking too much. um, Interestingly, when I was having my cancer treatment, I went to see a not a physiotherapist, a psychotherapist. And she said something that I've never forgotten. She said, if you're in a plane crash and the oxygen masks come down, they always tell you that you have to fit your own oxygen mask before you can help your children. And I think that going sober is like fixing your oxygen mask, so that when life does throw you lemons, you can be there with a lemon grater and your seed lip and tonic, and you can make sure that everybody in your family is okay. So that's really what I wanted to say about booze and being a mum or a dad. It's life is so much easier being a parent if you don't have to deal with all of that stuff. So if you're quitting booze now, or drinking more moderately, whatever you're doing, well done, because you're not just doing it for you, you're doing it for them, and that's great. So congratulations, you are superheroes. I'm just going to have a look and see if anyone's got any questions. So, oh, hi, Kim. Kim says, love last week's party. We nailed sober dancing. We did. I saw Kim Hughes at the Soberistas party, and there were loads of us all dancing with no booze at all, in silly wigs, and it was fabulous. And hang on, let me go up. Oh, hi, Suzanne. I'm glad you like the book. And well done on day 136. That's absolutely fantastic. And I love tea too. You can't beat a cup of tea. I'm well done, Louise, on more than 100 days. I'm really glad you like the book, and you are a better person. You're amazing. Oh, hello to my friend Jonathan Turner. And hello to everybody. Has anybody got any questions? No? Okay. Oh, Debbie says, how do you reward yourself now? Um, I have to confess, I've got a thing about cake. So, and I know I shouldn't eat too much sugar, but I sort of figure I've given everything else up. So, if I really need a reward, I will eat a very large slice of cake. Or I'll do something sort of really nice for myself. So I will buy myself something nice, or, I will go out and do so, have my nails painted or something. I think it's really important if you give up booze to treat yourself as often as you can, because you're doing an incredible thing and you deserve it. So, and you're saving loads of money too. Don't forget. So don't feel guilty about giving yourself treats if you've quit booze. You really do deserve them. And thank you very much for watching, everybody. And you're all great, and you're doing brilliantly. And oh, Helen Cooper says, have you lost weight? Yeah, I lost 2 stone, so I'm still not skinny, but I'm a really healthy weight now, and I wasn't before. Before I couldn't see my feet when I looked down, which was really embarrassing. And people used to offer me their seats on the tube, which was even more embarrassing. Um, Oh, Suzanne says, I have a teenager who is 16. So it's good to be a positive role model towards alcohol consumption. I completely agree. It's really difficult to tell your teenagers not to drink if you're drinking too much yourself. Um, Emma says, I'm on day 44. Well done, Emma. What do you say to friends who won't accept that you don't want to drink? God, you know what? I had one of those last night. I haven't drunk for over 3 years. And last night, somebody said, one of my friends just kept saying, "Go on, why don't you just have one?" Um, and my answer generally is no. I feel so much better without drinking that I just don't see why I would. And also, I won't just have one. I might have just one tonight, but next week I'll have two, and the week after I have three, and before long I'll be back to drinking a bottle of wine a day, and that really wouldn't be a good idea. So yeah, so that's generally what I say. And it's incredible, isn't it? Because you give up smoking and nobody tries to push a cigarette on you, but you give up drinking and you still get people who can't handle it. But just remember, it's not your problem; it's their problem, and it's normally people who have their own alcohol issues who can't cope with you not drinking. Stacey says, I've discovered a sweet tooth. Yeah, you know what? Everybody does. And I still do. And it's partly that we miss the sugar in alcohol, but it's also because sugar releases dopamine in the brain the same way that alcohol does. So it gives you the same sort of kick. And I think what I tend to do is I eat, if I really feel like I need sugar, I try and eat fruit. So I often have strawberries or something like that in the fridge, and I eat fruit, and I have a cup of tea or something, and quite quickly, it's a bit like alcohol cravings. If you give it 10 minutes, it normally goes away. But don't be too hard on yourself. Do have sugar from time to time. I try not to go over the top, but we all deserve some treats. So don't worry about it too much. Emma says, nearly 9 months. Does it still get better and better? Yeah, you know what? It really does. Um, I mean, it doesn't change quite so dramatically, but I found that the first year not drinking was all about looking inwardly and trying to sort myself out, and then year two was about doing a lot more stuff with my life. So my life kept changing, and every year I didn't drink, and I know that Laura Willoughby says the same, and she's been sober for longer than me. It does still keep getting better. So keep on going. You've done the hard bit. Now you've got the fun bit to come. Oh, Rebecca, you're very sweet. Thank you. Michaela, I can't stand people trying to get me to have a drink. Getting better though. Now people know. Yeah, I mean, when you do eventually, feel it's the right time to come out, it does mean that most people stop giving you a hard time. But you always get one or two. But as I said, just try and remember it's them and not you. Um, yeah, so thank you everybody for watching. And oh God, I've got another message here. Which is your favorite alcohol-free drink? That's Joanna. You know, when I first quit, I found that it was really hard to find good alcohol-free drinks, and you know, it was there were a few places that would sell alcohol-free beer, but otherwise it was just really sweet drinks. But there are so many good ones now. So my favourites, I really like. Actually, I'll show you what I'm drinking right now. This is Seedlip and Fever Tree. I know some people love. I love seedlip. I don't know that some people don't, but I think it's great. It's quite expensive, but I'm also really into kombucha, which is quite tricky to find, but it's great. I love alcohol-free beer still. If you read my book, you know I used to have a thing about Beck's Blue, and now there are way more options. I still drink Beck's Blue, but I drink a whole load of other ones as well. And sometimes, you know, I just have something simple like a lime and soda or elderflower and soda. So, but I do always at about 6 o'clock my old wine o'clock, about 6 o'clock in the evening, I always pour myself something special because, you know, it makes me feel like it's time to relax. So I think alcohol-free drinks are important. Some people find fake booze tricky, in which case, you know, drinking something like a kombucha or a lime and soda is you know better than drinking alcohol-free wine. Say, you know, I find fake booze quite helpful, to be honest, because it tricks my brain into thinking that I'm actually drinking the real stuff. Um, so anyway, thank you everybody. Have a great Sunday evening.